Thank you very much, Paul. Very pleased to be here. Very impressed by the Latvian organization. So I would like to really pay compliments to the organizers. I'm going to talk to you about the change of space procurement and the supporting approaches, because of course it is clear that if you implement a procurement change, this is part of a support towards the industry, and this has been part of previous discussions by policymakers. So I will quickly go through, let's say, the introduction, today's space ecosystem, the needs expressed. Then I will explain to you why, let's say, and how we come to this item. The European initiatives, a lot of things have been said by Stefan Airy and by Stella just the other moment, and a conclusion. These are the main topics in Horizon. So just a quick introduction. Stephen already mentioned that we were colleagues, but I think I was already at ESA before he was born, because I worked there for 45 years. I started in ESRO in 1972, and during my career I had all type of different functions. My last function was the head of Industrial Audit and Return Division, which meant that I have visited tens, not probably hundreds of companies already in Europe. So I've been very much in contact with all the industries inside Europe. I've also chaired many TEBs and panels. I retired at the end of 2017, and I started, because space was in my system, I started a own little consultancy company, and Bexperience. And the reason for Bexperience is the name, because when I was in Paris, my last 3 years, they couldn't pronounce my name from Beekhuizen. So Paul's, I must congratulate it. He was very close. In Paris, they always called me Beekhuizen. So then I thought, okay, if I leave, why don't I call my little firm Bexperience? But that's a little side remark. We talk about the startup companies, the scale-up companies, SMEs and LSIs, and then the academia, research centers and education centers. Now, of course, if we talk about the complete ecosystem, let's say we have to talk also about new space. And if you talk about new space, everything is new. There are new entrants, there are new investors, there are new products, there are new services, there are new financing methodologies, etc. So everything is new, and everything is linked to each other. If you want to have a proper ecosystem, then it has to be a very close cooperation between startups, scale-ups, SMEs, and in particular, let's say for those companies, also with the LSIs, the large system integrators. So when I mentioned that I had quite a lot of discussions with industries during my ESA time, but also now, it is very important to understand what are the problems which are faced by a startup company. And I just list here a few of the ones. And let's say I will not go through all of them, but for example, let's say they won't like to have specific procurement mechanisms. For a startup, to get a contract from the public authorities, public sector, is a matter of life and death. It really has to go fast. They cannot go through tons of papers and procedures and bureaucracy. So that's something which is very important. What was also mentioned, that from the public sector, it is very important that there's a demand for space products and services. From the public sectors in all the different domains, there's an enormous possibility for them to create markets, let's say, on which startups and scale-ups can step into. For startups, it's also important to be on the political agenda. They have to have business-to-business meetings, business-to-government meetings, and that's also what has been explained by Stephen, that there's let's say that this event will take place in Noordwijk, and of course always we've got also the industry space days. So we have already achieved a major reduction. Most public authorities have already achieved a major reduction in the procurement times. Let's say major changes have been made on the payment profile, so that it's cash positive for the startups, because cash is of key importance for the startups. And what is also very important is to grant access to facilities and expertise. There are so many facilities and expertise inside national and international space agencies which are funded by taxpayers' money. So it would be very good if the startup companies and also the scale-up companies can tap into these resources. And I think that is something which is of crucial importance, and I think this is more and more recognized also at the political level. Scale-up companies, of course, then we are in the next step, talking, let's say, with support from the initial business initiation to market maturity. The support also to connect them with SMEs. We talked about the industrial protection of the IP, and of course the interface with technology brokers. There also a lot of things have been done on the procurement and the support measures. Once again, the payment conditions have been updated. There's this whole in the BICs there is this notion of technology brokers which support scale-ups. And also again the expertise and facilities and patents support has been agreed. Then we talk about the next step, which is the small and medium enterprises, and for them it is of key importance to be part of the supply chain. So long-term integration into supply chains. They cannot have a stop and go. So they really need to have long-term access to the supply chain with the large system integrators. And what is something which is very relevant to know is that at the technology contracts, let's say they get 10% of the total number of the total value of contracts, but when it comes to the procurement, to the space development programs, the share of SMEs is only 5%. So that's something that gap has to close. So you need to have a very strong push, let's say, from the national and from the international space agencies to promote the fact that an X percentage of the amount from space development contracts should be devoted to SMEs. For example, in the States, you've got the small business innovation research, let's say, where in some cases there even 25% has to go to SMEs. European initiatives, I think let's say a lot of things have been mentioned by Stephen Airy and by Stella. Let's say you got accelerated the path finder, let's say the European Innovation Council. I would suggest, let's say that, and also with ESA, look at the website. There are tremendous possibilities for scale-ups and startups to get a foot into the door, and so don't let this opportunity go. Then we talk about the large system integrators, and I think, let's say, this is something which is not the case inside Latvia, but it is very important for the Latvian companies to get in touch with the Airbus, to get in touch with Ariane Group, to get in touch with Thales Alenia, to get in touch with OHB. I understand that somebody from Thales Alenia is also a member, let's say, or will be on this, so will be one of the speakers. So it is important, let's say, to get as quickly as possible into the contact with the LSIs. And let's say for the LSIs, of course, if we talk about large programs, there's the need for the risk-benefit sharing. Let's say also there you got the profit policy, let's say, which is dependent on the sharing of the risk and between the public sector and the company concerned. And what we see on the big development programs is that we would go from a situation where the National Space Agency or the agencies such as ESA, they say that you have to develop this satellite for me, that they would say it's much better, or this launcher, it's much better to do this with a service agreement, so that you don't buy the satellite, you don't give money for the development of the satellite, you pay for the services which is being provided by the satellite. And there, the role of the space agencies is very important to become an anchor customer. So these things are really linked. That if in the arrangement between then the National Space Agency or the Space Agency and the company concerned, you have to make sure that if they invest their money into this rocket or into this satellite, that they've got also the guaranteed return that the public sector will actually make use of the images or make use of the launcher. So the concluding remarks. The global landscape has changed significantly. New space covers a variety of new elements. But within this commercial space market, there are potentially great benefits for the startup, scale-ups, and SMEs. And I think that's something which, if there's one message which has to pass through, is to the space community here in Latvia and in other smaller member states, really get your foot into the door and try to get a share of the cake. The public sector needs to continue to provide accompanying measures. Let's say that's something which is crystal clear. And also to change of the procurement procedures, because in the past it was the contract regulations, clauses and conditions were one size fits it all, and you cannot have the same contract for a large development program as for a startup, for an academia, for a research center, etc. So the future of the European space efforts will very much depend on in my point of view, on the integration of startups, scale-ups and SMEs into the overall space ecosystem. And I believe, let's say, that is really a top priority for European policy makers. That was it. 51 seconds over time, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Peter, so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you again. For everyone, Peter has really good connections from days working at ESA, so use the networking where we're going to go. Just talk to Peter, tell him what you're doing. Even if you're a student, learn to communicate, learn to network. I think that's one of the key messages as well here. Thank you, Peter, again. Let's give him a good round of applause.